Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours for Monday, January 21st. And we are going to talk about publishing short stories. So what are some of the avenues if you want to indie publish some of the things that are kind of sitting under the dresser, or maybe you got some rights back for some of those magazine published short stories and you want to put them out into the world so they can be helping you generate revenue. So that's one of our topics, and I have a couple specific questions from Marie. So those are in this chat bar. And if you have a specific topic you want to tackle today, or there was something I said, remind me on Monday because we'll talk about it then, please remind me by dropping it in the sidebar. And then we can dive into tackling whatever the focuses are. Ooh, Leslie looks fancy.
What's that? Oh, Leslie. Ah,
Leslie is a snazzy profile pic there.
I'm so excited it actually showed up.
It did show up.
I didn't. I was really disappointed. I'm there. Look, you pretend
You
that's
are
what
there.
I look like right now, okay?
Yeah. Excellent. Did you have anything specific you wanted to tackle today, Leslie, or
No, I'm just gonna listen
lurking?
and try to learn.
All right, good. Short story stuff will be relevant for sure. And how about either Bonnie's? Not specifics, just generals. We're doing
something in the chat that some of us were talking about this sort of campaign that I'm on that other people said they were interested in, finding social media groups, etc., to connect in with, and other ideas of audience building. But that doesn't have to be this time, but if there was time, it could be.
Yes. Okay. And I'm assuming Chris has something since I can see that he's typing madly, but okay. All right, so two more are length of novel is 50K. Okay, these days. And also audio. So Chris, what about audio? Like, do you have a specific avenue of things?
I'm interested,
or just like a general kind of.
Well, I'm interested in because I am going to start producing more of my own audio.
Right.
I've got a home studio set up, and I've done quite a lot of it of my books for other people. I'm just about to do Chasing the Wind, actually, but a trad publisher, Tentor, has just bought that in the States, and they've asked me to read it, which is great. But I would like to just hear what people are thinking about the whole audio market, which, every time you go onto some sort of some guru's feed, they say audio is the big thing, audio's rising, audio's crazy.
Yeah.
And I know a bit about Findaway Voices, but is it best to use what are they called, an aggregator like that, or is it best to actually just dive into Audible and put it up yourself? Because I know you can do that too.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So I think we can dive into the audio stuff maybe first, because I think that would be a more contained conversation, and then we can look at a little bit of audience building stuff, just so that, Bonnie, you have a next place to go, and then we can do a bigger discussion on that down the road as well, and then we can tackle some short fiction stuff. I think we should be able to make some good headway on all three of those things. So as far as the question about length of novel, Chris, 50,000 words is fine these days. I mean, because it's not trying to be a certain thickness on the shelf necessarily, like if you're looking to start with an ebook version or whatever. If it's kind of an action-packed whatever, then, 50 to 80, whatever in that range is fine. I think it's more important for the story to be the length it needs to be than to try to pad a word count.
Right.
People have pretty limited attention spans and whatnot, so it seems like people are happy to just read the story at the length it wants to be. So, yeah.
We say that in England, it's as long as a piece of string, right? So
yeah, exactly. And because it is I mean, a lot of the times the word count targets are based around the publisher's templates for things and their costing equations based on cost of paper and number of pages and the templates they already have set up and like all that kind of stuff. And so if you're not trying to put it into an existing line of books at a certain publishing house, then you have a lot more flexibility in terms of the length that you decide to make it and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, anything over 40,000 words counts as full length as far as BookBub and like a lot of the other kind of places are concerned, because that is something to think about. Like if you're looking to have a book that includes BookBub features as part of your targeting strategy or your marketing strategy, you need to make sure that it is long enough to count as full length, because that is one of their criteria for standalone features. They don't do short stories or novellas. They will do collections as long as the covers are a certain way and whatever else. There's some criteria that they have. But if you're looking at standalones, then it is useful to just make sure you've hit that 40K, but otherwise it's pretty flexible. And then it becomes more about the genre. So if it's like sci-fi fantasy, then you probably want longer. But if you're looking at like an action adventure thriller type thing or romance or, whatever, those tend to be a little faster paced and a little shorter often. So that 50 to 80 range is pretty solid. And really you just adapt your price accordingly, right? So it's, if you've got 3 main lengths of books that you write and they're novellas and full length, but not epics, and then you've got like real long stuff, then you can adjust to reflect page count and, everything else. Because obviously the longer a book is, the more expensive the editing is. Like all of those pieces go up from a hard cost perspective as the indie author, right? So that's the other way to figure it is, if you're looking at, okay, well, a novella, I need to make X amount off a certain number of books to make this worthwhile. And then you can adjust your formulas upwards. If you're looking at print length, then it's paper cost that's an issue. And paper is actually a little bit in demand right now. There are some issues with paper supply around the world. And so costs of magazines and books are going up, and that will be an issue. I think particularly glossy, like for magazines, there's a pretty major shortage right now worldwide. So there's some interesting things happening with that. You can Google magazine paper crisis, whatever, and see what pops up. There's quite a range of articles. So that is just an interesting little aside to be thinking about as you're setting prices on things, is to make sure you have enough wiggle room, that if your print costs go up, you're not starting from scratch. So when you're deciding, do I put the print cost on a paper book of, so let's say you're going to indie publish your novel and you've calculated everything and you can offer it at, say, $10.99 or whatever as your price, then you just need to make sure there's enough margin built in that if the paper print costs go up a little bit, if the cost is built right into your cover, then you're either going to have to pay your cover designer to change that if you have to change the price, or you're going to be stuck at that price and have your margins shrinking. So you need to make sure that you price with a little bit of wiggle room if you're going to list the cover price, or just don't put the price right on the cover is another option to think about. So just something to be aware of as you're choosing if you put that in or not. It's an easy box to check or not check when you go to upload to Spark or wherever, is to include the price in the barcode or don't, and whether or not you put it on the front. So yeah, just something to think about. Particularly if you have used Spark where you pay for every change you make to your files, then that becomes relevant. You don't want to do that too often. Okay, so in general around audiobook stuff. So there is a lot of buzz right now that audio is the growth area, everything's rising, blah, blah, blah. This is the area everyone should be in because it's exploding. So there definitely are some really cool opportunities, and I think that that's not wrong. And I think if you're in a position, especially to be able to do your own audio, that's great, because you're not going to pay like $2,000 or $3,000 to the narrator if you're doing it yourself. So that's a nice advantage for you, Chris. And then because then it is just more markets, right? And it's different markets, and it's being exposed to different people, often in different countries. There's a lot of people around the world who listen to audiobooks in English who wouldn't necessarily read a print or ebook in English. So that's a real kind of market opener as well. Some genres do better than others. So there are some interesting stats on that. And I'm trying to think if it was a report that I saw through Findaway that had some of those stats of what the top ones were. Nonfiction especially is huge in audio, and I think particularly if it's by the author, if it's narrated by the author, then that is very popular. And then for genre stuff, more popular is often not read by the author because unless you're a professional voice actor, which some people like Chris are, then you are not really in a position to be competitive in terms of the quality of recording and the voices you can do and all that kind of stuff. So as long as you are hitting the market expectations, that is good. Question was around using reverse going to the individual. So that is an interesting kind of thing. So one of the issues is ACX Amazon. Apparently the internet connection is super stable, so fingers crossed. One of the issues is if you go through ACX to do your audiobooks, they do require exclusivity. And so they do distribute to a certain number of other places like Apple Books and a couple of other spots. But they do lock you in for a 7-year term, and you can't go to a lot of these other markets. So you need to be really sure if that's the direction you want to go. Now, one of the other advantages of going direct with them is that you can make a lot of money potentially off of the bounty program. And what that is right now is it's basically an affiliate program that Amazon and Audible have. So you get signed up as a referring author, and then if somebody picks your book as the first book that they read when they sign up for Audible, you get, and it's somewhere between $50 and $75 US, I think, per person who then goes on to buy books. So a lot of authors who go through ACX or direct through Audible, that's why they're doing that. Like they're focusing on telling people, read one of my first read one of my audiobooks as your first free one, and then they link directly to the program. So what they're trying to do is get new people into the system because they make more off that than they actually do off their audiobooks. So that's one of the sort of reasons why you might think about going direct to ACX is, for Chris, if you're recording your own audio, both are kind of equal playing fields in terms of production cost because there's no difference there really. The difference is just that bounty program, that's a difference. And then also the places it gets distributed to and the length of contract you're signing. So if you are looking to go wide, basically, we're right back to the same argument. It's go wide or Amazon exclusive and then take advantage of the benefits that come with that. So if you're looking to go wide, then using an aggregator like Findaway, who then has 50 markets maybe for your books to be in all around the world, that's pretty different than the 3 or 4 that you're going to get if you go through ACX. And there are some additional advantages, like Apple is starting to open up some of their channels a little bit. It used to be the only way into Apple Books or was to actually go through ACX, that they had an exclusive contract. And so even if you were using Findaway to distribute to those places, you were signing like one of the channels through Findaway's platform was actually the ACX Apple bundle. There was 3 companies bundled together. And when you check that box, they put it into the ACX distribution program. So you could not check that box through them and then upload non-exclusive through ACX and then kind of play both sides of that field. But again, it's like KDP versus Kindle Select. Like, you don't unlock all of the special features if you don't give them exclusivity. So Findaway has been renegotiating contracts with some of the places. So like with Apple, so announcement last month that we got now from our Apple book sales and stuff.
Sorry,
And there are some other programs with them.
Can you say that again? I really lost you on the funny internet thing there.
Okay. Which part? So like
about them renegotiating contracts.
Okay. So Findaway has renegotiated some contracts with Apple so that they can now give a higher royalty on that channel as well if you are through them. So there's a lot of interesting shifts and changes happening right now in the background with some of that stuff. And they are constantly adding new channels. So when I was trying to decide which way I wanted to go, the key factors I was weighing were, okay, how much do I think I could make off the bounty program for ACX in terms of referring people? And then also, was my goal ultimately to be wide, like to be in as many places as possible, which it is. I mean, my intention is over the next 2 years to leave enough in KDP Select and KU that I can keep the stable income going as I build up the other platforms, which is going to take, everyone says, roughly 2 years. So, you know, if you're looking at getting into stable sales wide and building enough of an audience wide and learning how to use all those ad platforms, because the consensus is still, if you are not doing ads wide, you're not selling anything. So you need, there's no, like, the findability algorithms on these other stores are nowhere near what Amazon has to work with. So you have to be a lot more proactive and active to be generating those sales on those other wide platforms. So that's kind of the thing to be weighing when you're thinking about your audio as well, is what's my ultimate goal for this? Audio is not fast. Like, when you hit publish on Kindle, your book is up in like 24 hours. I had published on a book like 2.5 months ago, and I just got a your book is active notification in the audio channels. It's a couple months. Like, yeah, it's not quick. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the background, and it does not move at the speed the other book channels move. So, you know, you need to think about that in terms of your timing, because all my Christmas books are just out now. So that's a thing. And then also just being aware of what your ultimate goal is, because making changes on the audio side is also not instant. You know, you can only submit changes so often to your like sales matter and stuff like that. And, you know, just looking at how that works, everything works slower. Even like listening, even consuming the book is slower because there's hours and hours and hours of audio recordings versus, you know, however fast that person reads. It's a different kind of experience. So I guess one of the other things that, you know, is maybe not an issue for Chris because you're recording your own, so you don't have the hard cost of paying a narrator. But for a lot of people, the determining factor is really going to be, does it make sense to make the upfront investment to pay the narrator outright and own your rights and all that material? Or does it make more sense to do it as a profit share arrangement where you're splitting 50-50 the royalties with the audiobook narrator for the 7-year period and beyond, really? Like, you're committed to that narrator as long as the book is through that channel, but it's a minimum of 7 years. And I mean, that's partly why that system's set up like that, is that if you're going to get a narrator to do a book for you and you're not paying them, you need to give enough time for that to earn something back for them and to have a chance at kind of earning out, or whatever the equivalent would be, before you can pull it. And so the other thing to know is you don't own the rights. When you go through one of those royalty split arrangements with Amazon, it's not like at the end of that 7 years, you can take those files and go elsewhere. Those files, the narrator owns their narration of that. Like you don't own it. So you can, at the end of those 7 years, pay them to buy them out of their contract effectively. But that doesn't become yours at the end of 7 years. So that's just something to be aware of as well. If what you want ultimately is control over that audiobook product and being able to like give away copies or, you know, have it on your website or use it as a promo in some other interesting way, like you don't have the freedom to do that if you do a royalty share through ACX in the same ways. So you just need to be aware of that. Now, if you set it up through ACX, but it's your own, you are the audiobook narrator, then you'll have a little bit more freedom, but you still have to be careful because Amazon has a lot of like distribution limitations. It's sort of like, you know, with KDP Select, if your book is in KDP Select and Kindle Unlimited, you can't just give it away on your website. That breaks your contract terms. And so, you know, even if you are the narrator, you still need to understand where Amazon's limitations are and what they're going to let you do with this contracted material because you're signing with them for 7 years. So yeah, it's a long-term commitment. It's sort of like, let's go from speed dating to, you know, committing to a forever and after marriage in like this, like you've got a bio and let's just commit, right?
Crystal, do you know if you go with Findaway though? I mean, I know I can find this out probably from them, but do you know do you have to sign up with them for a length of time?
Sort of. You sign up and I think it's like 6 months is the original commitment, right. But you own the files. So you can do anything else you want basically, depending on what you've agreed to. They have just introduced the option to be exclusive to Findaway. And so that means that you'll be in all of the distribution channels that you picked, but you won't put your Amazon files direct through ACX and then put everything else through them. Like, because you can do that. You can just select certain distribution channels through Findaway and then go direct to the other platforms that you want to go to. That is allowed with them. But they've introduced a new option where if you agree to just go with them, they can get you some better royalty deals with some of the other platforms, and there's some promotional opportunities. Like some of the big companies are just introducing the idea that you can have promotional pricing for audiobooks, because you don't actually, like if you go through ACX, you don't set the prices on your own books. Amazon sets those and you have no control over what they do. So Findaway lets you actually set the prices, and they've negotiated with these other channels that you can actually run promos and you can be part of other like group marketing things that they put together, and it doesn't cost you extra. They're just doing it to try to make it better to be wide, basically. So there's a different kind of level of engagement that's available there, but you don't have to sign up for that stuff. So it's up to you what you think. It's kind of like a mix and match thing, right? Yeah. Do you have other specific questions around?
No, that's very interesting breakdown, Crystal. I did not realize that about the 7 year for ACX and all that. It sounds too onerous to me. But I'll definitely consider it. But I've already had a little chat with Findaway, so I'll get back to them once I have some ideas.
And maybe the nicest part about all of it is like, one of the things I love working about them is there's real people on the other end of it, and they actually reply to emails pretty much instantly, and there's constantly new stuff that they're like, hey, this new thing's coming up and we thought you might like to be part of it. Does this, we think it'd be a good fit for your books. Like there's actually some discussions and some analysis going on in the back end, and there's a lot of thought, and it still feels like very personalized kind of service that goes into things. And even if you upload your own files and you don't produce through them, they still have their engineering team review all your files and everything for quality check before it goes out, like all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, that's really great. And normally there's like a $50 setup fee, but if you have a Draft to Digital account, then you can click that you're through Draft to Digital, and they have a partnership agreement, so you don't pay that $50 setup fee.
Right.
So that's the other thing you want to know is to make sure that you click that box. Like when they ask how you came to be in there, or you can actually even set up the book. Like if you're in your Draft to Digital account, there's a like make this an audiobook kind of link that will take you to Findaway. And that, I think that puts a cookie in your account that they know automatically that you came from Draft to Digital. So one way or another, you just have to tell them that, and you're good.
Right, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not getting rich off the audio. It's a whole different sandbox to play in because it's very much like the entire process of reading and reviews and like the Facebook groups for audio reviewers and like the street team you build is completely different people because audio listeners are a different group of listeners. There's not a lot of crossover actually on my list between the audio people and the ebook people. It's a whole new pool of readers. And so the upside is that if people are talking about your books, they're talking about your books. And, you know, if they're in a room of their friends, some might be audiobook listeners and some might still be like, I'm only reading it on a paper page. And some might be like, I like ebooks. So as long as they're talking about your work, then if it's in all these places and wherever they like to read, they can get it, then that's an advantage. So yeah, for this one in particular, I've definitely been noticing like the libraries are the biggest source of income right now for me. That part of what Findaway does differently is one of their big platforms is connected into the library systems, and they've actually added a couple more for library systems in other countries. But people can listen to your audiobook and then you get like 50 cents or $1, or I mean, mine are really priced low because they're short. So if you've got a longer book, it's going to add up faster than that. But people can get them through libraries. So if you've got like an Audible subscription and you get 1 credit a month or whatever it is, you're going to look for a really long book, right? Like you're not going to get something that's short because you want something that's good value. So like my box set, lots of people will use a credit on a box set or on a really long like sci-fi fantasy collection or, you know, whatever, because they're getting maximum perceived value out of that. Whereas if you can just go and listen for free through your library, you don't care what the length is. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. Like bundles or box sets of audio do really well on the subscription platforms, because if you can cash in 1 or 2 credits for like a box set, that feels like really good value, and you get all of these listening hours, and that comes across as, you know, getting a good deal. So for a lot of people, because the audiobooks are so expensive, that's what they're looking for, is those packages, those bundles. But a lot of the alternate channels that are popping up now that let you do shorter things or price them in different ways or whatever, there's some neat opportunities there. And there's some cool opportunities to like have your special features as like a 99-cent audio. Like if you've got some fun little extended chapter somewhere, or you want to, you know, do a character bio or a deleted scene or something, you can put it up for 99 cents and put it out there. Like it and people on, you know, Audible probably aren't going to download it, but anybody who's actually paying for their stuff or is in one of these other subscription services that's not based on a credit model might pick those up. So did you watch the interview yet, Chris, with Will Daggett from Findaway that I did?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay, start there. That would be a good spot. He talks about lots of that stuff, about how
Will
Daggett, Dages,
and it's on and it's just on the website.
Yeah, it's in the publish your book section, I think. Right. I think it's also on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't gone there yet.
I don't think I know about the YouTube channel. Is this new?
Yeah, it's relatively new. Yeah, we started releasing some of the videos that we have inside the Academy to the public, so that a lot of the members were like, we want to be able to like watch them on our TV over breakfast. So if you got a smart TV or whatever, you can watch them kind of like a podcast. I'll put the link in here in a second. but that is a nice way to do it. And we need a few more subscribers before we can have the nice URL. So for right now, it's a terrible, terrible URL for our channel. I put it in the chat bar so you can link to it from there.
Great.
Yeah, and if you look at the self-publish your book section, there's the interview with Will. And then I actually just interviewed a couple of my narrators that I worked with on my audiobooks. And so those ones are going to get posted in the next week or so as well, which is just interesting listening from to their process of how they go through the preparing to narrate a book, and also like for the authors, what they like in working with an author, like what makes it easier for them to do a good job of your book. So I thought that was really helpful as well. And some sweet like blooper reel stuff that's hilarious. What happens when your cat gets in on the recording and things like that. Yeah, chaos is what happens. Okay. So, Bonnie, finding social media ideas and audience building and stuff. So Jen made you a spreadsheet. Did I get that right? Is that what happened?
Jen gave me some names of groups, but I'm talking more about, I don't remember which team we were in, having a conversation about using this idea of having, finding social media groups that are connected to some things, to build audience, and then what other ideas you have.
Right.
I think it must have been either in Storystorm or maybe it's with the Kidlit. I'm not sure, but they're like Marie and some other people were like, gee, we should have an office hours about this.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't in Storystorm because there were non-Kidlit writers talking about it. I don't remember where.
Yeah. So, but just in terms of what you're looking as an outcome is just brainstorming ideas about like where else you can connect to people, or how to use those connections.
Well, I just think that the working through finding social media groups is a longer process. Everything is a long process. So I was wondering if you had any ideas of how to move more quickly in another path at the same time as working on this one.
Right. Okay. So yeah, there's a couple different ways. And if we're thinking specifically for you, some of the stuff, because if you're looking at middle grade and like connections into education, some of that stuff just isn't fast. So there's a certain amount of what you can act quickly on now that will set you up for, a 6 months or a year from now. I don't know if it works the same way where you are, but we have professional days here for our teachers where it's like an in-service day. I don't know what language they use south of the border, but it's like that everybody gets the day off and the teachers go and do teacher education. So there's mini conferences in every single school district, basically, where they bring in presenters who will do workshops for the teachers. And so that is a really good way. Even if you don't have a book yet, you can pitch yourself as a subject matter expert. And if you have some resources for the teachers, which you do because you've already created those, then you can pitch a session to come in and basically educate the educators, which is one of those long tail things where if you've got some lesson plans and you're looking to build your list, then that's one way to connect with people in person. And I found those to be very effective. You'll get really high conversion rates and really high interest rates because people will have chosen to be in your session. Like out of the big group, you break into multiple sort of focus groups after. And then, so if you're teaching one of those breakout sessions, it's already people who've chosen your subject area as something they're interested in. And pretty much all of them will sign up for your newsletter to get your resources that you're offering. And it's your chance to establish yourself as a bit of an expert in a certain area. So specifically for your education related stuff, that's a really good way to be building, and you don't need to have the books published already in order to do that, right? So that's a way. if you're looking at writing, like you're writing books and things like that, so stuff for adults, I don't know if you've looked at any of the BookFunnel promo opportunities.
I don't know what that really is.
So BookFunnel is a tool that lets you deliver books directly to readers, basically. Like, and I can show you that because that might be the easiest way to go about it at the moment. And we can poke around and see what there is in your area as well. So BookFunnel, it is a paid service. There is that, but it is very reasonable. The basic plan is like $20 a year or something like that, which is not crazy. And what it lets you do is you set up your books in here, and then you can become part of promotions. You can make your own bundles and things. There's a lot of features that you wouldn't necessarily need to use right away, but it will like integrate with Patreon, for example. Like if you're getting patrons and then providing them with content, you can do that. There's a like sales plugin, so it lets you sell books directly to your readers and deliver them in a way that you're not hosting that on your website. But I think the valuable part for you would probably be in the promotions area. So when you look in here, you can see there's all these different genres that have promotions. So if we go into nonfiction, there are a couple of promotions that are currently accepting more books into it. So we've got this one is any subgenre of nonfiction. The theme is the new you in 2019. Right now, 14 entries, and there are 15 slots. And if we click on it, we can see this is who's hosting or organizing it. These are the limitations. So it's saying you can only have one book per pen name. There's a limited number of spots. You know, it'll have limitations around what can or can't be in it. And the organizer sets that. And then there's the dates of what it's going to be and what you have to do to participate with it. So sometimes you have to have a mailing list of a minimum number of 1,000 people, or sometimes there's no limit. It just depends what the organizer has set up. And then often the group organizer will have put together some social media graphics and stuff that you can then use to share on your social media channels. So for this one, these are the people who are in there. And this actually looks like not a bad, space for you, Bonnie, in terms of the types of things that are in here. But you can look at the page and see what it looks like. So what happens is the promo has a page and everyone's covers appear, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you click on it, and I'll show you in a sec what that really looks like. This one's not live yet, so it won't let you click. But you click on the book, and then people put in their email address, and then they get the book in exchange for you getting their email address and permission to send them your newsletter.
So this is for ebooks, right?
Yes. Yeah, this is for ebooks. So that's one of the things. In order to build quickly, you have to be able to have people acting on their impulse purchases. So anything that you can be making available as an ebook probably wants to be a pretty high priority for you right now.
Okay.
Because you can't really impulse buy a print book unless you're physically present. So let's go back to the teacher example. Is if you're going to be doing an in-service in a classroom, you probably want to have copies of your writing prompt book, whatever else, if you've got other products that relate to that. Let's say you want to sell some more copies of your writing book, right? Because you have that as an option. Then looking at, can I do presentations at writers groups and then have books to sell there? There's nothing that's a fast build when you're looking at hard copies and in-person stuff. The only real way to speed things up is by doing it digitally, because you suddenly have access to everybody. And the channel of I'm interested and click and then you're there. And I mean, that's where the speed comes from, is removing the effort required for people to be part of things that are going on. So
yeah, that makes sense. So if you were doing it, just one more quick question.
Yeah.
So if you were going to do a BookFunnel promotion, where does the ebook live that you can give away for the email?
Okay, so here's the beauty of this. So how this works is you set up your book, and yeah, let's do this one. So you set up your book, and it gets its little area in here, and you actually upload your book cover and an EPUB file and a Mobi file. So if you use Vellum to do your layouts, you can get those from in Vellum, and you just export and then drag the files into here, just like you would if you were dragging a file into an email to share it. You can also use Draft to Digital to do your layouts, and then just download the files from inside Draft to Digital. That's one of the coolest tools that they have for authors, is to let you do your layouts. And even if you don't publish it through them, you can download the laid out files, and then you can upload them into here.
So Draft to Digital is another product?
Draft to Digital is one of the, it's an aggregator for ebooks, but it's free. It doesn't cost you any money to do that. You just sign up for an account, and then they have inside your account, there's all these different tools that you can use. There's all kinds of stuff. So you can actually set up your books in a very similar way that you do with BookFunnel, but inside each of these, oh wait, let's go add a new book, and you'll see what that looks like. So we can add a new book, and you can upload a Word document, and it will, you pick some choices in your layout options here, and it will format your book for you.
Wow, with just a Word document?
Yeah.
A paginated Word document, or just a regular?
Just a Word document, because there's not pages in ebooks. So this is the thing. Right. If you have a really visual book, then this is the tool is not going to be ideal for you. If you've got a lot of pictures and you need to tweak the text in a more manual way, then you can give it a shot. It actually does really well. But
what'd you say? Because my books, a lot of them are like these day-at-a-time books, so each page has a different prompt and some encouragement. So that wouldn't be so great in this?
No, it would totally work. The prompts and the chapters, like, as long as in your Word document you use the heading 1, like you have to actually use the headings in your Word document, because that's how it can tell you're in a new section. So as long as you have like set up your Word document in a way that it gets that you've had a section break.
Okay.
It knows that. It's incredibly smart. It's quite magical, actually, what it can do automatically. And you know what? Just set yourself up an account and import the document you have now and see what works and doesn't work. And because you can preview it, right? And if it doesn't look the way you wanted, then you can go back and alter it. It only takes a couple of minutes to import. It's pretty neat. And then you'll see exactly what worked or didn't work. And then you can go back and apply those heading. And if you use heading 1, heading 2, whatever, it will preload most of that into your document.
Cool. All right. That's something for me to play with. Thank you.
It is. And yay for free, which is awesome. Okay. Hi to Susan. And if you have anything you wanted to talk about specifically, drop it in the sidebar, and then we'll see if we can hit that today. Okay. Where did we get on our list of things? So maybe we'll spend the last 15 minutes just talking about what you can do with short stories in terms of getting them out there and working for you. Since Marie wanted to know, she's got some short fiction that have been sort of previously published in magazines and or other places, or maybe haven't hit the market yet, but she's interested in putting out there. So there are some pretty cool ideas and tools that you can use to do that right now. So the good news is KDP has their own, there are sections on Amazon specifically for short stories now, short reads. And so that is a nice way to just not necessarily have to bundle everything into collections, but if you can put them out as single stories, then it lets you have a number of products available on Amazon, which makes it easier for people to find you. Whether it's, and I'm using Amazon as like the blanket term for whatever e-store you want to be in. You can go select and just be in the Amazon world if that's easier to manage, or Draft to Digital, the tool we just were using to show Bonnie how to do book layouts. That same tool is a distributor. So they distribute to hundreds of ebook stores. So once you have your book uploaded to Draft to Digital, you can actually just hit publish and it will go, it's available to libraries. They have Overdrive built in there. So you can just check all the markets that you want it to go into. And they keep, I believe it's 10%, but double check that. They keep a percentage in exchange for managing everything for you. And it is so worth it. I can't even begin to explain how nice it is not to have to go into all these channels. And the other thing that's a really big advantage is also like they have a lot more pull with the individual stores. So if there's a problem with one of your book listings, or if you want to remove a book listing, it happens inside of like 48 hours. Whereas as an individual doing it, I've had it like weeks where I couldn't get a response on a thing or something wasn't right. There's actually a really good podcast on the podcast is called Blood, Sweat, and Words. And you've maybe seen it a little bit lately because we've shared, I think all three of Donna, Eileen, and I have been interviewed on that podcast now at various times. But there is one of the most recent ones is actually with Kevin Tumlinson, who's one of the founders of Draft to Digital. And it's actually built by authors. So that's part of why it works so well. And let me just see, I'll put a link to the episode in here in just one moment. Hopefully the internet will stabilize slightly by that point. Okay. Oh, they're not most recent first. Okay. And Joanne's actually a local lady. She lives on the island. So that's fun. All right. I'm going to keep scrolling till I find that link. There's got to be a better way. This has to be searchable.
While you're scrolling, if you do it through Draft to Digital, then you're not able to do it on Amazon, or you just can't do select.
Okay, sorry, the internet totally ate that. It was all scrambly. So well, the pieces I heard and can extrapolate from is if you do Draft to Digital, does that mean you can't do KDP Select? Was that the question?
Or Amazon in general? Like, is it mutually exclusive?
No, it's not mutually exclusive. So what I recommend is that you use Draft to Digital to lay out your files if you don't have Vellum, and then you hit publish on Draft to Digital on all the channels except Amazon. And then for Amazon, you publish direct to KDP because that gets you the best possible royalty rates and the best control over like your keywords and all that kind of stuff. Because some stuff is better if you can have an Amazon specific place to play, not all the stores respond the same. So if you can tweak things on Amazon to be perfect for Amazon, and then that leaves you the rest of your wide stuff working that way, which is
And are those separate ISBNs for the one for Draft to Digital and the one for Amazon?
It's not the distribution platform that matters, it's the format. So because everywhere else uses EPUB, that probably is its own ISBN. So you should ideally have a different ISBN for each format. So if you had an audiobook version, Mobi is the format that Kindle uses. So if you have a Mobi format for Kindle, that should have its own. EPUB should be its own. Print should be its own. Yeah, you get kind of a range of them.
So it's the same book on both distribution channels, but because
one I'm using EPUB and one I'm using Mobi. I have separate ISBNs for those.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Marie was asking, how do you actually do that? Like, what are the steps to publish them? How and where do you get visuals or cover for either of them? And then how you could use them. Okay, so let's start with how to actually do it. So there are like cover designer tools built into the Kindle platform. So if you're doing like short stories or something, or articles that you're going to publish as singles, you don't necessarily want to pay hundreds of dollars for each cover. That's not functional. So if you're just looking at something that will look, you know, polished and professional, maybe not going to win awards for cover design, but will be respectable and represent your work, then you can use the Kindle Cover Creator if you're in there for your Kindle versions anyway. I'm not sure if Drafted Digital has something similar actually or not. That would be something to look at. But, you know, if you have the option, you can go on like Fiverr or one of these other places where you can get pretty cheap covers. You can also look at paying someone to build you a template, where if you are going to use Canva, or if you do have Photoshop, some designers will build you like a background that you can just swap the photo out, but their font would be the same and the positioning would be the same. So you would just type in the new title and change the picture in the background. Or, you know, there are some options around that. So if that's something you're thinking about, you can look for somebody specifically who does that on one of these other services. And I've got someone I might be able to connect people with if they're interested in doing that. Then, you know, you just make sure you ask them to use open source fonts so that you don't have to buy a $200 font to be able to customize the file, right? So there's some things like that are good, and maybe we can set that as another, like how to get the most out of your cover design process. We can make that an office hours topic for future.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna make a note of that. Okay. But yeah, basically you just want something that is going to look polished. Even if all you had was a single square that was the like one of your branded colors with your title of your name in your branded font and a like big clear label of your name of your article or something. Like if you go scrolling through the nonfiction, there's plenty of stuff where the articles and the short stories have covers that look like that. Again, it's not rockstar, it's not ideal, but it'll do the job, at least temporarily. And so that's something to look at because you can always change that as well.
Crystal, when you do something like that, do you put in the back of the article ways to connect to your website, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. So the back of every single article, and not even the back of it, it should be like the end of the text before you even hit the end matter. Should it be like ... you know, for whatever your call to action is, for more brilliant essays on this topic, blah, 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 or to connect with me, blah, 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 here's where you go. And remember how in MailerLite we looked at those landing pages that were like the quick load landing pages? That's where that link would go, is in the back of your book, so that they're clicking, it opens a little form. All they do is type in their name and email and hit enter, and then they're signed up. So it's not loading your full website. They're not navigating around to find anything. It's just a quick and dirty straight link to the sign up form. So if you published like, and so we talked about blog articles, you can do the same thing. You can put a blog article up for free or for 99 cents or whatever on Kindle or Wide, right? So there's ways to do that, and we can talk. I'm going to add perma-free books and articles for next Monday as well, because I think we could do covers and perma-free books would be a good combination if you're looking at next steps for this. Because yeah, if you want to just generate eyes on your stuff and you have a couple great articles in your subject area, then finding the people who are interested in that stuff, you put up a free article and then they download it and read it. And if they like your style and they like your content, they're way more likely to click on the link at the end that says get some more like this. Okay. Thanks, Susan. Nice to see you. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. What did I not hit yet? How to use these articles. Okay, so we kind of have been hitting that a little bit. So a couple other things there. You can use them just as giveaways. So you might bundle it up and make it available through your website. Those are all possibilities. Personally, I think articles and short stuff not bundled is a good way to go, because it gets you multiple product listings on the e-stores, which helps more people find you. And you can really niche down with your categories. Like if you're writing a nonfiction article that's really specific about a certain holiday, or ties back to a really specific audience, then you can have those really specific keywords used and in different categories. And it's sort of like if you think about fishing, if you just have one little hook in the water, that's your one collection of all your articles, it's pretty easy for the fish to just swim around that. But if you have, big long net with a whole bunch of hooks dangling down, and you stick that in the middle of the river, I mean, you're going to get arrested, but also you got a lot of hooks to catch things, right? So as long as this is metaphorical and we're not actually fishing this way, we're good. But yes, lots of little hooks and at different heights, right? Like if you think of the different lengths of the strings as different lengths of products, because some people just like to read short stuff and some people like long stuff. And if you are using your short things as individuals, you can also bundle them. There's nothing that says you can't do that. As long as you're a little bit aware of, if a single articles are enrolled in KDP Select, you can't put them in an anthology that goes wide. Like you have to honor the licensing requirements that you've agreed to, depending on which channels you choose. But we can talk a bit more about that as well as specifics of like what you can and can't do.
Crystal, so if I just want to make sure I understand, so for each article or subject area, you would create in MailerLite a sort of different landing page. Is that right?
You would create a different landing page. It doesn't have to be for every article, but like you might have one that's for writers. So same way that we had those different groups we talked about for you. So if you've got your middle grade educators or your homeschoolers or your writers or your folks looking for Jewish holiday information or tradition information, those same groups that you would have in MailerLite, you would have a different landing page maybe for each, because you might tweak slightly the wording, or you want to then connect that landing page to that group. And so then you're not manually figuring out who came from where, you know exactly where.
And then they'd each have their own campaign to finally get funneled into the newsletter, correct?
Right, so that's like where that first intro email might be different for each of those groups. Then after they get that first one, they get bumped into the main group, and then it's like the same sequence of things.
Cool.
There you go. I can see it all making sense in your brain. That's fun. One piece at a time.
Yeah. I'm going to have to, this is why I only made my goals for the first quarter, because things change.
Exactly. That's the whole 12-week year concept, is like you prioritize what you can immediately see in front of you as going to be really beneficial, and then we regroup very, very often. We're lucky if we make it 4 weeks without our stuff changing. But as long as your big goal is like, I want to increase availability of my books this 12 weeks. And so, and it doesn't all have to be done overnight. So there's a certain amount of I know I want to do this now. When I come up to this next 12 weeks, I look at how does that fit in? And so you're just giving your future self a head start on what that's going to be. And now that you know you want to do it, you're going to notice when I post an article that's like how to make your own covers for nonfiction articles or whatever, your brain is attuned to realizing you need that information soon.
Yep, that's great.
All right. Well, on that note,
Crystal, I'm sorry. I just want to put out one other idea for office hours, and that is spending money. So how much we invest in our writing.
Nice one.
And ways to think about that in terms of like percentage of your income. I mean, assuming that you're not making money or enough money from what you've produced so far. Different ways of thinking about that. Because I realized that it was great doing that retreat to parse out these other things, but that's probably a big piece of being sane in your writing life as well, is having some sense of what and I'm interested what other people do and, how they're figuring that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have lots of suggestions and tools on that because I am so strict about that in certain areas. Just don't put an app in front of me. I'm useless at resisting. But yes, there is a very clear process of weighing cost versus benefit in some things. And I think there's some good questions we can share around that to sort of help filter, like, is this just the next shiny thing? Or am I going to actually see real benefit out of this? And how do you weigh financial benefit versus like career advancement and branding benefit? Like some of it's short term, some's long term. So
yeah,
I think that'd be great to do.
I think people are probably doing different things, and it might be interesting to hear for people that are willing. Money is such a taboo topic, but we're willing to at least talk in percentages of like, their spending versus what they're earning, et cetera.
Totally. Excellent. Okay. I say we put that one on a Wednesday night time period. So probably in a couple weeks, I'll block it in for the first one after the branding stuff.
Perfect.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks, ladies. Lovely to see you. And happy writing day. We'll see you later. Oh, we have our first writing sprint tonight with the library, the the Richmond Public Library. So there's a 2-hour block this evening of the writing room if anybody is looking for company.